share the throne with him? This was his art. Tell Caesar there will be a new Rome or a new Caesar. Leander!
Get me gold, Cleander. Strip all the public monuments, the temples, the gods and goddesses. Get me enough gold, Cleander, to drown Livius and his new Rome.
Normally when you watch a scene like that, you think those soldiers are getting really rich. They're going to be have a lot more stuff. If you think about Rome as a whole, though, all they did was take gold from one place, melt it, and put in coins and give it to some other people. Rome itself, or the vicinity of Rome, isn't actually wealthier. It can't make more stuff just because you melted a bunch of gold. And so I'm hoping that by the end of this lecture, when you see a scene like that, even if your first instinct is that those soldiers are a lot richer, your second instinct is to say that the prices in that area are going to go way, 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 way up. An example is Spain. When Spain conquered the Americas, the Central America, they came upon some places. They found this one mountain that was basically silver. The whole thing was silver with a little bit of dirt on top. And so Spain was able to acquire more silver than any other country before. And everybody at the time thought that this would make Spain one of the biggest empires at the time and would be the most formidable. But it never ended up like that. Spain never benefited that much silver, never benefited that much from the silver. And that sounds strange unless you think that, well, okay, so you bring a bunch of silver home. It's not like the area can make more food. You can just all of a sudden horses appear out of nowhere, that you can just make more metal. You just have more of this silver. And so what happened when they brought silver more silver back to Europe, the prices started going up everywhere. Not just Spain, over in England, in Germany. Almost everywhere prices were going up. So Spain, yeah, they ended up with a lot more silver, but prices went up a lot more. What you saw there, taking statues, turning it into gold, making money, that's creating new money. Going to Central America, mining silver, bringing it back, that's creating new money. And so is going to a computer and saying, I'm the Federal Reserve, I'm just going to say I have $1,000 and there it is. That's how we create money today, and that's what today's lecture is going to be about. But first we want to do some clickers to review some stuff from last time. Then I'm going to look at the announcements. Make sure you're on channel 46. The first couple, I appreciate someone who pointed out in the practice questions for creative destruction. Obviously, I must have either done it real quick, or let's just say whenever there's an error like that, it was my TA's fault. I signed them something, they just messed it up. I apologize to you on their behalf for that. Whenever there's a mistake like that, I always go back and I put it in red. So if you printed off something earlier and there's a new answer, you'll go and you'll see that the old answer is struck out and the new answer is red. And I want to go over some of those creative destruction questions that I put wrong in there to make sure you understand what the right answer is and what I'm really asking of you. This is the one that was pointed out. The question says, today less than 2% of U.S. jobs are farm jobs. In 1800, that number was around. Tell me what you think then. Yep, 60%, 90%, that is the correct answer. This is, again, my way of telling you, for this, those two numbers I want you to know is 1800, around 90%. Today, less than 2%. On these questions, this one, in last class I said immigration. Here I'm saying trade is different from technology. Well, that so much is true, yeah. Even though both lower the cost of producing a good, trade causes some people to lose their job. Does that sentence sound more like a true sentence or a false sentence? Most of you said false. Good. That's the correct answer. What I'm training you for here is to be a bullshit detector when you watch TV. I really am. When you watch news shows, they're going to be doing some brilliant stuff. And you can learn a lot from almost any news show. But especially when it comes to trade, they're going to say so many things that just aren't right. And I'm trying to train you to recognize when they say, well, trade and technology, they both lower the cost of a job. But trade causes people to lose their job. The fact that that sentence suggests that the same is not true for technology, it really misleads people. And that's why I say that sentence is false.
But on 11 here, you corrected 5, but 11 still looks like it's true. Yes, that's correct.
I found those other ones this morning.
Okay.
So there, I apologize. I know that's frustrating. If you go there now, there are 3 total corrections. I'll try to pay. I'll watch what my TAs do to make sure they don't keep making these mistakes over and over. These are all my fault. Which of these currencies was gold commodity money and was the original euro during the 18th century? Just seeing what you remember. Yep, you're right. The ducat. By the way, I read an article just the other day where in Africa, where a lot of countries are just bypassing landline phones and going straight to cell phones, what's emerging as a very valuable currency is mobile minutes, because you can transfer it there. So if I have 10 minutes of mobile time, I can transfer it to you. And because those mobile minutes has value, and because so many people have cell phones there, and because they don't trust the government printing their money, they're placing a lot of value on those mobile minutes. And it's something you don't have to worry about. I've got my currency, you've got yours. What's the exchange rate? It's just minutes, and it's becoming a real form of money. And it's like commodity money in that if you don't use the minutes as money, you can use them as minutes. Although currency in this country was backed by gold, certificates for that gold could be given by almost anyone or any bank, resulting in 8,000 different types of currency in the nation. Yeah, most of you are correct. The U.S. before the Civil War. I find this fascinating because I have to confess, I did until 2 months ago, I didn't know that. I had no idea. What is this a picture of? Yep. A contract for a loan. Lender takes one piece, a borrower takes one piece, and I apologize for my depiction of that thing in last class. Just to see if there's anything I need to say about announcements for this class. There is a homework 5 about those 2 articles. There is one question that we didn't talk about in class is who's the economist that came up with comparative advantage. And it's in the Bounty of Trade. You just go there, there's this quick video to watch where they tell you. And I'm not going to be doing this all semester, but I want to make sure we all have confidence in the clickers. At every class, I'm going to have this link. You can go there. It's got your name, your clicker ID, and the attendance record I have for you. And you need to tell me earlier on if you're seeing any problems, because there's going to come a point when I decide I'm going to trust the clickers. And from that point on, I have to trust clickers because you need to understand, especially in a class this large, there's some people going to be lying to me all semester. You know, like in D2L, anytime you go on D2L, it records what you do, where you went, what you did. So if a student comes to me and says, I was doing homework 3 and I almost finished, but then the software failed, it crashed, and then I go in D2L, it showed nothing, you had no activity there, I asked the student about it, they confessed they lied. I think that's happened 8 times already. So please just understand, I think you're all great people, but we all lie a little. I've been lying about my TAs all lecture long, just to give you an example. Today we're going to take notes on the slide, the piece of paper that we printed out that looks like this, and my TAs handed out. We're going to be taking notes on this to start with. My TAs handed out a worksheet that we're going to do after this. Raise your hand if you need the TAs to come give you that worksheet. Is there anything I need to address or answer in the class? No. We did the examples of money. And I'm about to raise these slides and do some notes. Remember, all this week's about money. There are 2 other pictures like this that I want you to hand out. That we can print out. This is another one of the things I'm going to be talking, saying some things that I think are interesting, the things that I think you're responsible for. I'm going to write them on the board or tell you to write it on there. So if I'm telling you something, but I'm not writing on the board and telling you to write it down, that means you're not responsible for it. At the top of your piece of paper, you're going to see this equation, MV equals PQ. This is, I think, one of the most important equations to understanding what we call macroeconomics, the economy as a whole, when we're talking about inflation and recessions and Obama stimulus, things like this. The purpose of this equation is to go from money, the amount of money that's out there, to the prices we pay and the income we earn. And this is important for you trying to understand how our government manages money, because we don't have a gold system. or silver system, or currency based on mobile minutes. Our government decides how much money is going to be available to us. And so we want to understand how they're doing it. And everything they do is really, really simple, if you hear from someone who wants to explain it simply like that. The first section there is talking about him equals money. I'm just writing this to show you where we are here. And there are two types of money out there. And that's what those two sentences tell you. The first one says, this can be the total dollars called the Fed's balance sheet or the monetary base. This is how I explain this type of money. It's just a different definition of money. There's no one thing called money. If we had a system of gold was used as our currency, and you said, how much gold do we have? That's like our monetary base. There's this fixed amount of possible dollars out there. And our government determines how many of those dollars can be out there, just like they might determine how much gold people can trade. That's the thing that we call the monetary base. You might want to underline monetary base. Notice that it's also called the Fed's balance sheet. And I like explaining this like this. I'm going right there. If we had a gold system, a gold currency, this would be the pounds of gold. The best way I have of explaining it's a surprisingly difficult thing to imagine, because it's not just like the number of dollars in the bank. This is what I think the best definition of money is. If you look over to that graph to the right, that's the monetary base over time in trillions of dollars. So you see in 2008 we started out at $1 trillion, and then the financial crisis hit. And so the crisis would turn into another Great Depression. The Fed started printing a lot of money and giving it to banks so they wouldn't go under. And look how much money we printed. It's scary at first, but it's not. You don't need to be as scary as you may be at first. It quickly doubled. I mean, almost instantaneously. It's like just what the Caesar did, Commodus. He said, there's some gold out there not being used as money. Let's melt it and just throw it out to people. And that's what they did. And then they ramped it up even more. The number of dollars, possible dollars that could be out there, has more than doubled, tripled. It's amazing. But there's been no inflation. And this is why. And we're going to write this down on the next sheet that we do, which will probably be Friday. It is true that we've been printing a lot of money, but it's not out there being spent. Like in the film I showed you, there was gold that could have been used as money, but it was in statues of gods. And they said, you have to melt it down, then we can throw it out there. We print a lot of money, but it's just not out there. Banks are not spending it yet. And the idea is that once the economy gets going, and if it looks like inflation started, the Fed's going to go in and take all that money back, or a bunch of it. I know it seems weird. It's easy to imagine creating money, but we can take it back too. We'll talk about how later. Then we have this in the second sentence there. Or it could be the total amount of cash, dollars, and checking accounts, and the like. Some of these dollars are shared. That may sound strange. How can some of our dollars be shared? We have this monetary base, looks like the number of dollar bills out there, but we share some of it. And it's really quite simple. Raise your hand if you have a bank account. Checking account. Not all of your money is there. It's being lent out to other people. I may have gone to your bank to get a loan, and the bank loaned me some of the money that you think is in your account. But you still believe that money's there, right? You can write a check, and it'll work. So those dollars are yours, but they're also mine. We're sharing those dollars. So this other definition of money is like the monetary base plus some, because we're double counting, triple counting. And this share means like bank loans me money from your checking account. It may seem hard to believe, but about 90% of the money that people think they have in their checking account, on average, is not theirs. It's someone else's. There's a lot of dollar bills being shared. Right next to this graph, I want to add one thing about printing money. So you see we've been printing a lot of money. And just to the right of that, I want you to add, I'm going to be calling it printing money because I think it's easy for you to understand. We imagine dollar bills coming off a printing press. If you go to YouTube, there's a Federal Reserve, that's the people who handle the money. They've got a video saying we don't actually print money. That's a false statement. I say printing money because I think you imagine dollar bills coming out. That's exactly what it is. But they don't print actual hard dollar bills. What they do, they go to a computer. They say, I'm going to buy a bunch of stuff from this bank over here. But I'm not going to get that money from the Treasury. I'm not going to get it from taxes. I'm not going to borrow it. I'm just going to write into that bank's checking account, go to the keyboard, $1,000,000. So they can just go to a computer, type in dollar bills, and that's new money. So when we say print money, we mean print electronically. However you want to say it, they just go to a keyboard and say, I feel like having $1 million today to spend. I'll put in $1 million in my computer. That is it. Now you probably noticed we're going to the velocity of money now. Any dollar bill is spent multiple times. And the velocity of money tries to capture that. It says velocity of money, the average number of times a dollar is spent. And then I want you to underline on final goods and services. And yours passes from one person to another. I buy something from you, you take that money you buy from someone else, and on down the line. But what does final mean? Just think of it as not used stuff. Things created this year. So this velocity of money, talking about number of times a dollar spent, it doesn't care how many times a dollar is spent on a car that's 5 years old. It cares about number of times a dollar spent on cars produced this year. Everything we're going to be talking about in this money velocity, M equals PQ equation, it refers to goods created this year. That's what we call final goods and services. And if you look at that velocity of money, you've got a graph there, and you see it's been rising over time. We don't keep dollars in our pockets as long as people use spend it fast. And then you look around 2008 and you see it plummets. Well, you know what that was? The Great Recession. People get scared. Their income might fall. They may lose their job. So they say, I'm going to stop spending so much. And when they do, a dollar bill is spent a fewer number of times. Now I want you to, starting in 2008 when it starts that drop, I want you to circle that on the graph. And draw a line and say something like this. Fear of difficult economic times. again, in your graph showing the velocity of money around 2008 when it starts to plummet, I want you to circle that area where it's going down, draw a line to this, and write fear of difficult economic times. Fear of difficult economic times causes people to spend less. And something we're going to see is the one thing that really divides Democrats and Republicans, and Democrats and Republicans who are economists as well, is how you should respond to that. Then P is the price level. Ultimately, what we really care about is people's lives. How good of a life do they have? And if we're talking about how much income they earn in 1 year, what we're talking about is not so much the dollar bills and stuff, but these goods and services we consume. Smartphones and computers and the food some of you are eating right now, but clothes some of you are wearing, some with or without sleeves, depending on how much muscles you want to show off. And if you think about all the things, what we're trying to measure is these goods. Well, how do we represent that? Well, what we do is we say, okay, suppose you were the typical American college student. We'd study you and look at all the things you spend money on. Rent for your apartment, beer, bustle shirts, weights, body odor spray. After you lift and weights, you don't want to stink too bad, so you spray yourself. Because you smell a little different, but still okay. And even from here, it's not that bad. All these things you spend money on, we come up with this construct, a mental construct of a basket. We just imagine a collection of goods that people consume. And then we say, how many dollars do people need to spend to get that basket? And in this graph, I'll show you a little about what that basket is, not for college students, but for the typical American. And you see the big slice there, about 43% is housing. What that means is people tend to spend about 43% of their income on housing. So when we think of this basket of stuff we consume, 43% of it is a house. Now this basket, it can be a dangerous thing, not dangerous, but it can be a frustrating thing to deal with because the things that are in your basket today, a lot of them didn't even exist 20 years ago. So how do you account for the fact that we have iPads in our basket today but not 20 years ago? You have to do a bunch of adjustments. You just do the best you can. This stuff is certainly not perfect. And I want to make sure, beside the price level part, we'll try to measure how many, the cost of living, whether the price of things in general going up and down. I'll write this to help you understand what P means. If P rises, now this isn't much, you can just put it just to the left of the P price level columns. If this P rises, becomes a bigger value, that means the number of dollars to buy this basket it also rises. You've heard of inflation rates. You've probably heard the term consumer price index. It comes from here. The consumer price index is just a percent change in P between years. Now I want you to look at the graph to the right of price level. It shows you the consumer price index over time. And something changed in its behavior. About what year did it start to behave differently? Rise at a faster pace? 1970, something like that. Remember what happened around there? Something that has to do with money. Yeah, that's right. In 1971, we went off the gold standard, where instead, before, the amount of money you could print depended on how much gold that we had. Well, starting 1971, Tricky Dick said, just print as much as you want, folks. I don't care. I'm going to be out here in a few years anyway. And since then, this thing called the Federal Reserve that we'll talk about a little bit, they decide how much money they're going to print. They could destroy money too, but they kind of like printing more than destroying. Now I want you to understand that in this graph too. So that break around the 1970s, 1971, where it was rising at a gentle slope and then the slope get much larger, I want you to point to it. And I want you to write in your notes what happened. Shows this graph of Consumer Price Index, which is just P, and then it does something like this in this year, 1971. I want you to circle it on your piece of paper, draw an arrow, and just remark, U.S. converted from gold standard to fiat money. Remember, fiat just means doesn't have to be backed by anything. There's no commodity like gold or silver or mobile phone that's constraining how much you can put on. Are there any people out there who, not you, I'm talking about when you watch the news and TV and stuff, you ever see someone who wants to go back on the gold standard? Who? Ron Paul. That's one of Ron Paul's big platforms, is going back on the gold standard. And what they're going to argue is things like, well, the Federal Reserve prints a bunch of money, they give it to the banks just go out and throw money on lots of crazy investments like houses. We have this house bubble, then it's burst, and then we have this horrible recession. And he claims if we went back to the gold standard, which would prevent the Fed from printing so much money, we wouldn't have all these problems. There is a faction of libertarians / conservatives who at least publicly say they really like the gold standard. Rather, they would really go to it if they had the opportunity. I don't know. I can tell you there are almost no economists who want to go back to the gold standard. And then finally we have Q, real income. What is real income? Toys, goods and services. Remember those baskets describing how much stuff, a collection of goods that we like to buy? Well, Q is just the number of those baskets we get. And you look in the graph to the right and you see Q, real income, going up and up and up over time because we're getting richer and richer and richer. Of those things in that basket we like to buy, we have a lot more today than people 20 years ago, 40 years ago. What this MV equals PQ equation does is it connects all those four things. The number of toys we get, the price of those toys, the amount of money in circulation. And it's very important to us because our government is set up where we have control of money. It says down at the bottom of this sheet, P, Q, and V are determined by human action, interactions, and negotiations. Meaning to produce the stuff in the basket, that's what businesses do. The price of those baskets is negotiated by people. Velocity, the number of times we spend a dollar, well, that's up to us. But M, money supply, is not up to us, not up to you and I at least. Nor is it up to the amount of gold. It's determined by this thing called the Federal Reserve. And economists for over 100 years have been trying to learn how to tweak this money supply. Print more money, burn money, not just for fun, though I imagine it's quite fun. They're really, and I say this in all sincerity, there's no politics, very little politics in the Federal Reserve. They're honestly trying to make your lives better. They know what harm a lot of inflation can do to an economy. They also know that in hard times, it's possible that printing some money and giving it to people can make everybody better off. And so this MV equals PQ equation is what we debate about. Some people say we should try to print money. We can't really control things. We can't control the economy like some people say. Other people believe we can make your lives significantly better if we just print just the right amount of money. On that handout, the first page is a group of questions. But I want you to turn to the second page, where you see Big Ben Bernanke. At this point, you may be wondering who actually makes this decision about how much money to print. You could do a whole course on the history of the Fed, how the Fed works, things like that. This course has to cover a lot of material, so I'm just going to get you down to the basics. That dude right there is Ben Bernanke. He's not a dictator. He can't alone decide how much money the Fed is going to print. But he is the chairman of this thing called the Federal Reserve. It's often called the Fed. I've got one sentence I want you to write on that sheet of paper with Ben Bernanke and the Fed. I've got one thing I want you to write beside it. Ben is the chairman. So when he makes decisions, there's a lot of other people that have input into that decision as well. And it's really something of a group decision. You may remember Alan Greenspan. He kind of ran it like a kingdom, where he was able to do what he wanted by manipulating other people and doing things a certain way. Ben Bernanke uses a more democratic process. You can think about it, maybe there's like a dozen people who are involved in this decision of how much money to print. But he's the chairman of the U.S. Federal Reserve. Which we usually just call the Fed, which controls the money supply. We're going to learn exactly how they print this money and give it to people, and how they destroy it as well. And so what are they trying to achieve? What's their organization's objective? This is the last part with the objectives. They have two main objectives. They want low unemployment. And the main reason they've been printing all that money lately is because they're really concerned about people who are unemployed right now. And they're really trying to help those people have a better life. The Fed, the second objective, they would probably say price stability, but it's really predictable inflation. The Fed doesn't want stable prices. They don't want the price of things to stay exactly the same. What they want is for you to be able to predict inflation. And before 2008, they did a pretty good job. Inflation was about 3% per year. And this is why this is important. If you go to buy life insurance or any type of insurance, you can often negotiate a policy that locks in payments for 20 years. So think about that. I bought policies that said the number of dollars I would pay for this insurance next year, 5 years from now, 15, 20 years from now. The only way that company would sell me insurance like that is if they thought they could predict inflation pretty well. They knew what inflation would be in the future. How else would they know what type of price to charge me 20 years from now? And that helps create a good business atmosphere. Helps create jobs, helps create wealth. What do you say? You want to cut our losses? You set out of here now? You want to?
Really quick,
Yes.
for all inside or anything, I'm sure I say it right. Inside 125 tomorrow, Catalyst and Catalyst are having guest speakers. It's a guy from Daily
Thank y'all.